Jai Hind, Namaste, welcome to Galp Taru, the Tree of Stories, which is a celebration of Indian folk tales. My name is Ambalika and I am an author and storyteller, and Galp Taru is my special storytelling initiative on the occasion of the 75th year of Indian independence. If you are new to this channel, heartiest welcome. I am so delighted to have you here, and I hope you will take time to check out all the stories in the Galp Taru series that we have put out since the 26th of January this year. And if you're a regular, thank you so much for your support, and I hope you will continue to do so. Summers have their own charms. Think of summers and mostly you're thinking of bright colors. And when you think of colors, how can you not think of the state of Rajasthan? Yes, Rajasthan is bright and beautiful, not just in terms of its dresses, food and music, but also when it comes to storytelling. No other state in the country, for that matter no other region in the country, has so much of a diversity and brightness in its folktales than the state of Rajasthan. Back in the 1960s, two youths in their 30s decided to embark on a journey of collecting folktales, Komal and his childhood friend Vijaydan Detha. And they had a very good reason for this. Detha was already well known for his art of excellent storytelling, and many of his works had featured in the folk journals of that time. And his most famous publication was the book Bata Di Phulwari. And as for Komal, he was a well-known ethnomusicologist, meaning he sought to find out the relation between folk tales and music, and he was also interested in the traditional practices of water harvesting and agriculture. Together, they set out on this exciting journey, and they started with Detha's native village, the Borunda village in present-day Jodhpur district. And they had a logic behind that. The daughters-in-law of this village came from all over the place outside of Jodhpur, which means they came with them, or rather they brought with them, a treasure trove of different cultural practices, knowledge and stories. Little by little, they reached out to these women and collected folk tales and their variants, and soon they were sitting pretty on a mountain of 10,000 folk tales. After going through all these folk tales, they analyzed and found out that three things determined the nature of these folk tales. 1. The economy that drove this region. 2. The lifestyle of the people. And 3rd, the geographical characteristics of this region. For example, in communities of regions where shepherding was the dominant profession, the hero of the folktale would be a shepherd protector, and his life would be modeled along the lines of Lord Rama. And in the Marwar region, these tales are referred to as the Pabujiro Pavaro. Pavaro is the Rajasthani equivalent of the English ballad. Likewise, in regions where milk was the primary driver of the economy, the stories would feature an incarnation of Vishnu or Krishna himself. And in other instances where there used to be a conflict between the agriculturists and the cattle keepers, then they would have their own Pavaro, which was modeled after the tales of 24 brothers who would always be defending the cowherders from the oppression of the Rajputs, and these sets of stories are referred to as the Bagaravatro Pavaro. And in combination with the incarnation of Vishnu, they had a subtale of this called the Dev Narayan. In yet another region where snakes were rampant during the monsoon season, it was believed to be mandatory and auspicious to listen to the stories of the snake deity Gogaji, because it was believed that listening to the Gogaji stories would be protection from snake bites. These stories are referred to as the Gogajiro Pavaro. And except for these stories, no other stories were actually told during the rainy season, because that would mean interfering with the sleep of Lord Vishnu. Just as the nature of stories are so eclectic in Rajasthan, the nature or style of telling these stories is also quite diverse and exciting. We are all familiar with the puppetry style. But in this video, I would like to introduce you to 3 other very old yet contemporary styles of storytelling. One is Hela Khayal, second Bhopa-Bhupi, and third the Kaavad Banchana. The Hela Khayal is a 300-year-old form of storytelling which is done through group songs. It originated in the Dausa region of Rajasthan and it deals with political and contemporary issues. Bhopa-Bhupi is an 800-year-old form of storytelling which originated and is still popular in the southern region of Rajasthan. It uses a scroll, which in the traditional language is referred to as the phad. It's a piece of cloth which is about 12 to 20 hands long, and on it has pictures of the story that is being narrated. And these stories are mostly from the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Panchatantra or other mythological stories. It features a couple to carry out this storytelling, the Bhopa and the Bhopin. That is my understanding because that's what I have seen. The Bhopa is the man and he does the narration in a high-pitched voice to the accompaniment of a stringed instrument referred to as the Ravanhatta. Whereas the Bhopin lights up the scroll, meaning she provides the special effects using lights. Kaavad Banchana is a 400-year-old form of oral storytelling in which stories from Ramayana, Mahabharata, Puranas and other folk tales are told using the help of a kaavad. A kaavad is nothing but a brightly built wooden box with multiple panels. And on each of these panels are portrayed scenes of the stories that are being told. These boxes are prepared by the Suthar community, which is the carpenter community that lives in the Mewar region. This box, which contains the story, is called the Kaavad, and the person narrating that story is called the Kavadiya Bhat. The term Bhat distinguishes them from the other Kavadiyas who are otherwise known for being water carriers. During the 2018 state elections, the then ruling party made use of the Hela Khayal, Bhopa-Bhupi and puppetry styles of storytelling for their election campaign because they found that people were able to relate to it so much more, and these were so much more effective in taking their messages to every nook and corner of the state. So as you can see, the folktales of Rajasthan have a very high devotional quotient. So be it the stories of the Bheels from the Banaswara Dungarpur region or the Garasias of Mount Abu or the Meenas of Savai Madhopur, religion and spirituality are the cornerstones of their culture and therefore everyday life. And so it should not come as a surprise to us that even their contribution to the Indian freedom struggle had a spiritual component to it. In the later half of the 19th century and at the start of the 20th century, there lived a guru, Gobind Giri, amongst the Bheels, who created a movement which was initially meant for the social upliftment and welfare of the Bheel community, but which eventually turned around and became a mass movement for freedom struggle. Unfortunately, it met a gory end. It resulted in a massacre and ended in November 1913, and we know it today as the Mangar massacre. Now, if you are wondering that unlike the other regions, did not Rajasthan have anyone from the British Civil Service interested in documenting the folktales and history of the region? Then, well, the answer is there was a gentleman, Lieutenant Colonel James Todd. Todd was actually appointed as the resident or the political agent to the court of Maharana Bhim Singh of Udaipur. And his most notable contribution, Todd's major contribution, was during the Third Anglo-Maratha War, in which he was deputed in the intelligence department to help the East India Company win the war. And his biggest contribution at that time was coming up with the map of the then Central India, which turned out to be quite a game changer for the British Army, who after his official responsibilities and during his free time, out of his own personal interest, did interact with the natives and put down his experiences, and all of this was published as the Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan upon his return to England at the completion of his service. Oops, not at the completion of his career. Actually, his career was cut short. he put an abrupt end to his career with the East India Company because he found it increasingly difficult to maintain good relations with both his bosses as well as the natives. And that was because his boss, David Ochterlony, did not really like, or rather perceived it as a danger, that James Todd was having such friendly, good relations with the natives. He found it detrimental to both his personal interests as well as the greater interests of the East India Company. And so he systematically brought down Todd's responsibilities and also reduced his areas of influence, and which in turn became a source of humiliation for James Todd, and he no longer saw any point in continuing in service, and so he quit and returned to England. And now we come to the most exciting part of today's episode, which is revealing the title of this week's first folk tale. The title is A Feast in a Dream. This is an English translation done by Irene Moore from the original Rajasthani folk tale, and the tale originally also has a counterpart in other parts of India where Hindi is spoken, and also it has a Persian and a Kashmiri version, and it has counterparts outside of India as well, in Europe, Puerto Rico, Brazil, and in the US. So it generally features the story in all these versions. It features 3 male companions with one trying to outwit the others. In the Rajasthani version, it talks about a man from the Mio community which is a minority community, trying to outwit the Khanzadas, who are Muslims and who are always scorning the Mios and treating them as dumb and as not doing their work properly. So the story is about the Mio man trying to tell the Khanzadas that they are smarter and as hardworking as the Khanzadas, if not more than them. So while I go and prepare for that story, why don't you go ahead, hit on that subscribe button and tick that bell notification so that when the story comes live, you don't miss it. I'll see you soon. Till then, Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.